right. Hello, everyone. I'm Eli Plaskett, Senior Associate Editor with Modern Machine Shop, and welcome to today's presentation, Capture Process Know-How Before It Retires. The presentation will be led by ProShop ERP founder Paul Van Meter. Paul is the president of ProShop USA and founder of Addion Systems, which developed ProShop ERP, a web-based paperless ERP MES QMS system specifically designed for the metalworking industry. They partner with shops who use technology by going completely paperless, strengthening their ISO or AS9100 systems, combining all their shop software into one system, and building robust business processes to achieve high rates of growth, profitability, and performance. If you have any questions, type them into the question pane of the webinar interface. We'll do our best to answer all of them at the end of the presentation. We'll also be sending a link to a recording in case you missed something or just want to revisit the topic. Now, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's get started on our Halloween webinar.
Thank you, Eli. So this is Brett Michaels. Paul couldn't actually make it today, so I'm filling in. Hopefully I do okay. Now, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Obviously, it's Halloween. We decided that it was worth just going all out. So here I am in my most favorite 80s rocker outfit since the last 20 years. I think just growing up in the 80s as a teenager, it just feels right to be in this outfit. So thank you again for joining us. I am super grateful and appreciative to be joined by two good customers, Bob and Heidi from ProsperTech and Craig from Lang Machine. We'll get to know them in a minute, but they're going to be sharing how they have been using ProShop and other tools to capture process know-how before it retires. I think everyone can recognize that the baby boomer age is getting to the point where I think the number is about 10,000 a day are retiring. You know, this silver tsunami, I've heard it called, and it's affecting our businesses. I think people are leaving, whether it's retirement or other reasons, and taking a lot of intellectual property, a lot of process know-how with them. And it's difficult on our businesses. So we're going to learn about some strategies to mitigate that. So let's jump into it here. We always start our webinars with our mission statement because we believe so strongly in it. We deliver powerful manufacturing software by deeply understanding our clients' challenges in order to meaningfully improve their businesses and in turn their communities. And it's that communities part that really, really drives what we do and what we care about here. So I'd love to start by introducing Bob and Heidi. Thank you again for joining us. Heidi, we want to say a little bit about ProsperTech?
Yes, ProsperTech started in 2007. Bob and I, my husband on the screen, started in our garage, and it was the recession when we started. We were doing plastic injection tooling and kind of over time transitioned into a precision machine shop. And once we knew we were going to make it, we were really focused on building our systems and just scaling our business. And that's how we came to know ProShop.
All right. And if you want to know more about ProsperTech and Bob and Heidi's story, it's truly an inspiring story. They were guests on my podcast, Machine Shop Mastery. So we just put that into the chat. So feel free to grab that link and listen to that later. But I love the story. You know, basically, yeah, during the recession, Bob got laid off. They decided to take their life savings and start a business, and now they have a thriving shop. So just a great, awesome story. Thank you very much. And Craig, apparently you told us that Lang Machine will be 50 years old tomorrow. So happy early birthday. Yeah. And tell us about Lang Machine.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, tomorrow we'll start our 50 years.
That's amazing.
My dad started the garage in this shop, second mortgage of the house. We moved up into our current facility in the late 70s and added on multiple times, getting into the larger work. So we're doing well.
Yeah. So just for scale, can you tell the audience like what size your machine travels are, what kind of size and weights of parts you're dealing with typically?
So we do medium to large work. We go from 80,000 pounds on down. Our big machine has 12 feet of vertical and 62 feet in between spindles.
Oh my gosh. Between spindles. What does that mean, between
Yes.
spindles?
Oh, it's a twin column horizontal boring mill.
Okay. Wow. That's a very large machine. Okay, very exciting. So there's a lot on the line when you are processing parts of that scale and size and cost, I'm sure. So you got to make sure you have people that know how to do that. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about just why it's important to focus on this as a strategic priority for your company. We're going to talk about building a library of skills in your team, some big picture tracking. We'll give some specific examples. They've been kind enough to share some screenshots and some parts and things they're doing in their systems and their companies today. And we'll talk about some use cases. So let's get into why this is important. So as I said earlier, something like 10,000 baby boomers a day are retiring, and that is just retirement alone. So people leave for all different reasons. I'm sure all of you know just better than I do even how difficult it is to find, people that are skilled machinists, programmers, people that know this industry and trade well. There's a lot of competition for them, so they're probably being recruited and other reasons. And then occasionally unexpected or unforeseen events also happen. So for all these reasons, it's important. And I thought maybe if you would be willing, Heidi, I know you shared when we were prepping for this that a few years ago, you guys had sort of a tragic accident with one of your employees in a car accident, which left you kind of high and dry with information they had. Can you just share a tiny little bit about that with us?
So in 2018, we were just starting to realize that maybe we had to write some processes down. And unfortunately, that summer, our shop foreman, which was a great friend of Bob's, died on the way home. He was on a motorcycle and he got killed on the way home. And it just kind of hit home that everything that he knew, all the years that he had been working and things that he had been doing for us, died with him. So it was hard enough to deal with it personally as a tragedy for us and for a lot of our employees, but it just really hit home like how important it was to start capturing some of that knowledge after that happened.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry about your friend Bob, and sorry about the employee. That's so difficult. And yeah, that just definitely brings the point home that you never know what's going to happen. So it's always good to prepare. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So we can categorize knowledge into a few different areas. And we just have 4 of them here today in front of you. I'm sure we can think of a dozen more, So general shop processes, how to do things in your shop, where to find things, how does your company run? How do you do just the most basic things that are not part number specific? You'll have, of course, client specific things. Every shop knows every client is unique. They have unique wants and needs and requirements, and you need to document those somewhere. Oftentimes it's in people's head. They know that this customer requires this type of packaging or this type of paperwork, or they want to know about their status updates in this format, or whatever it might be. There's always a million things related to those. And if you can't deliver what that client wants in the format they want, they're not going to be as happy, right? People want consistency. That's why McDonald's is popular. Anyone can go anywhere and get the same thing. When a client is working with your shop, they want a consistent experience with communication, with process, with documentation. So documenting things that are client specific. And of course, part number based information is super critical, right? All of you probably have jobs that you do on an ongoing basis, or you get a recurring back again. And there are probably people in your companies that know how to set up those parts, know how to run them, know the intricacies of how the tooling needs to be or the fixturing. And if you don't pass that along, you don't capture that, and that knowledge leaves for one reason or another, it's very difficult sometimes to pick that back up, to have to kind of reinvent the wheel, figure it all out. And your customer is likely to experience a fair bit of friction as you learn that process. And that's something you just don't want to put onto your customer. And then, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about just general machining and machinist skills. As we all know, it's so hard to find people. So a lot of companies are, including on this call, are hiring people with less experience, putting them through training, apprenticeships, their own internal training programs, just to upskill those folks on how to do the very basics, like set up a vise or dial in a tool or upload a program. So there are things that fall into that category as well. Bob, Heidi, Craig, anything you want to add to anything I just mentioned right now before we get into more specifics?
I think one thing that, oh, go ahead, Craig, you go.
Sorry. I think finding this general machinist skills, finding this people in the skilled trades is extremely important right now. Mm-hmm. Everybody talks about automation as being the winning ticket, but you still need people to run the automation. And even though you need less people, there's more work getting done. So you still need more people, I think, to run everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. And Heidi, you wanted to make a point?
I think when you were mentioning all that, I just was thinking of how our progression went from the beginning when, I'd have a tray on my desk with piles. And then we evolved the clipboards, right, Bob?
Clipboards. Oh yeah, clipboards from one end of the shop to the other.
and then we had file folders for the customers, and then we had digital files for the customers. But it always was an issue of especially rev level control, mm-hmm. and people knowing, okay, where is the latest information? And I mean, now that we have an MES ERP, it's easy to say, why didn't we get this sooner? But it was always a struggle to keep all of that organized. Or like you said, the customer that, we have customers that want it packaged a certain way. So if you don't see the clipboard with a piece of paper on it, how are you going to know that? Sure. So it's just made it so much better that everybody's doing the same thing in our shop now.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And one of the books I always like to share and talk about with people is a book called The E-Myth, which stands for the entrepreneurial myth. And they talk about building your business as if it were going to be a franchise, right? Alluding back to the McDonald's reference I made. So even if you're only ever going to have one location, if it runs like a franchise, as if you could replicate it, hundreds of times over, and each location will run the exact same way, that will provide the best client experience possible. And so if you have a client that has specific packaging requirements, like you said, Heidi, you don't want that to be just on a piece of paper. That needs to be in a system that anyone can access at any time. So if get pulled, maybe the shipping person is out sick today, and so they get pulled into the shipping department and they want to do it the right way. It's got to be right in front of them on how to do that and what they specifically should do. So great examples. Let's keep moving here. And hopefully a system will be a repository for training and content and the records themselves, particularly if you out there have ISO certification or AS9100 or 1345 or something where the auditor also needs to see training records. It's just much more cumbersome and difficult if those are on paper or if they're just in spreadsheets or Word documents and they're in a file network. If they're not in a database, it's much harder to keep them current, to make sure people can see what they need to do and get trained in. And so we, just as an example, we have, a training module and then company positions where you can specifically say, and we'll share some screenshots later, like, here's what you need to do to become a senior level machinist, a setup machinist. And here's the things you need to be trained in. So if you have people that, come into the company that aren't as experienced, they can see, but they are real go-getters and they have a fire to learn more. They can see what they need to learn in order to, move up the chain and to take more responsibility, better pay, just a more fun job probably as well. So that's important as well. And so there's a few places where we can capture this. The org chart is a place, and we'll share that in just a second here. Our training module, company positions, and our user pages are all really tightly linked together. So this is a generic example of a simple small machine shop, how we have different people in different roles. You can see their names here. The blues are all hyperlinks. Oh, excuse me. they're all hyperlinks into those particular users, or you can link into the position. And so let's jump in here next and let Heidi, this is a screenshot out of your system. So describing, so for example, the VP of operations, they first need to get, you believe they should get trained as a shop floor manager and then learn quoting and planning as well. So can you describe a little bit about how you're using this? Oh, you're muted, I think.
Okay, can you hear me now? I can't see it in front of me, so I'm looking here because I have a copy of it here. But we have the positions that are in blue, but I think you have the names crossed out. And then we have like what trainings that they would need. So we have all that tied in, like, what they have to do. And it might be like even the ProShop fundamentals to the quality system to something on the shop floor. But they go through and then they're accountable to someone else. And then once they do the training, then it has to be completed and marked off by their manager. So it's just a nice guide to know. It helps too, like when we're hiring, when we're advertising for positions, it's so much nicer now when we say, oh, we already have a written job description for this. We don't have to start from scratch every time. And this is where it's plugged in, and this is who they answer to, and this is how they're trained. It has made the onboarding process so much more streamlined to already have this ready to plug into on ProShop for us.
That's awesome. Great. Yeah, and these numbers, by the way, next to the company position or the training number is what we call a proficiency level. And if we actually jump to the next slide, we can see that. So here's just one example. This is out of our own demo system. It's not one of Heidi's. This would be a task that describes something in a company that needs to be done. There's going to be a training record associated with it that might have a video, might have questions, might have, whatever the company deems important. Very often it's on the job training. It's like, show me, how to dial in a device. Show me you can, upload a tool or touch off a tool. And then when people get trained in those, their name shows up here in the approved column, and you can assign a proficiency rating, which our default is basically 1 to 4. 1 is they have just rudimentary understanding. 4 is they're a complete expert and can train others. And you can set minimums. So maybe to be a senior level programmer, you need to be a 4 in programming or toolpath simulation or whatever it might be. And then you can also, speaking of tying it back to, ISO or AS, or in this case, CMMC, we can tie the task right back to a requirement from the standard itself. And that helps organize things if you want to get your ISO certification or your CMMC or whatnot. So obviously
that's also too, like during an auditor always asks for records of your employees being trained and how you can prove that they're trained. So like that really ties in nicely to answer that auditor.
I love the fact that you said that, and that is exactly why we put this little section in, because you can do it the opposite. If you're, let's say you are eventually going for your CMMC audit, and they said, all right, section 1.02 or 1.32 or whatever, show me how you meet those requirements, and that will link directly to this task as one of the areas where you can show compliance. But it always shows the backlink, so it does make the auditing really fast. We have you guys actually gone through an AS with ProShop yet?
No, we're scheduled to do one in January. So I've only done the internal audit. It ought to be fun.
Yeah,
but it should be a lot easier because everything is right at our fingertips. Sure.
Yeah, it's not uncommon that it takes about half the time. So. All right, and then here's just a generic example. This is out of one of our demo systems. So a setup machinist, here's some sort of a job description or essential functions. These are the employees that are currently in training or mostly trained in the role. And here are the requirements, again, with that proficiency rating. That could be any number of different types of records, whether it be another sub-level position or a procedure or a task. I see we have a comment from Frank. Frank, thank you. You've had several audits, I think is what he means. So yeah, Frank is a good customer down in the South. So thank you for sharing that. All right, I know I'm a little behind schedule, so I got to pick up the pace. So here's just an example as well of a generic employee. We can see, oops, my mouse seems to want to do that. We can see the roles they're currently in. So in this case, Mark is fully trained as an entry-level operator, and he's almost there as an operator and QA, and 83% towards a machinist. So we can see what training he still needs in order to get trained in the roles that you ultimately want him, he or she to move into. So just a nice structured way to organize all that. So let's talk about some other use cases. And in this case, Heidi, we're going to ask you again, you're using the equipment module quite a bit to capture some processes. You want to share with us here what you gave us for some screenshots here?
So is that the eyewash one?
Yeah, we have the eyewash and then the regulatory, but let's focus on the eyewash.
So that was something we had to upgrade our system there from having my OSHA audit, which is the Michigan OSHA standards. And when we got the equipment, it was just easy to plug it into ProShop and develop the training right then. And then also to have like the maintenance module, which you can see like the check due is in orange. So I put that on there because it's probably been done by now, but when I submitted the screenshot, just to show that when the person that is doing that maintenance, when his screen pops up orange, that means his check is due. So the training's tied into it, and then also who's responsible for it and how they check it, and then they mark it complete. So if you're a supervisor, it's easy to go in and see, are they doing what they're supposed to do, or are we behind? Especially if you have an audit coming up and you can see like, okay, are we lapsing anywhere? Just keep an eye on it. And then is the other one up there?
We'll talk about the regulatory one a little bit more later.
Okay.
So let's we'll save our comments. So on the eyewash station, prior to having it organized this way, how would you have kept up on that, or did you as much, or was it paper check sheets, or how did you do that?
We had a lot of paper check sheets on a clipboard that our maintenance guy would go around and do. And then before an audit, we made sure that we had the sheets in case the auditor pulled the thing. But it was cumbersome compared to this, or knowing like who the manufacturer was, or if we had to order parts, you had to find the manual. So it's a lot more streamlined having it available. And then anybody else can do it too.
Yeah.
If that person goes on vacation or something, it's easy to see where they're at with it.
Sure. And then here we have another shot of your AS9100 management review schedule. So can you speak to that? Obviously, that's not a piece of equipment, which it is being, or you are organizing the schedule, how often it needs to happen and when it needs to happen using the module. But can you describe a little bit about that?
Yeah, I chose to put that in the equipment module because of the check dues, and it would give me reminders, but then also for the to-do list, like when you have action items in the management review, I just found it was the best place to organize it. And then as we complete them, I can go in and take them off. But that way, if there's carryover, then I just easily carry it over to the next management review. Sometimes you don't always want to do an action item 3 months in. But it's just really good with the check dues that things don't get lost, or they're not on a paper on someone's desk, and everybody has access to see what their action items are.
Very good. I like it. And then this is an example of not from Heidi, but from actually my old shop, ProCNC, where we would use this to organize the 5S activity. So this was a particular area where we stored mobile equipment. We always wanted to make sure it was back in place and ready to be used the next time we needed it. And every 45 days, we would go and audit and sort of redo that area to make sure it was good. And so the shop assistant or multiple people would get the alert that, hey, this is coming up due. You got to come do this, and just incorporate that into their workflow. And without that, it's really hard to know what needs to be done. And if someone that was doing that thing leaves, you kind of lose that. It's maybe on a checklist that they know about that no one else knows about. So you could easily, lapse on your frequency, which if it's an item that's required for ISO or AS, that could be a big problem on your next audit, let alone the problems that it can cause if whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing are not being done in a timely manner. And then, of course, this ties directly into, and this module was originally designed, of course, for things like calibration or preventative maintenance of equipment. So these are some sort of non-equipment examples, but imagine the person doing your calibration all of a sudden is gone and you're not really sure where it's at or what's done or what's not done. So just hopefully sending home the point that capturing this and making it easy for others to pick up is just so important. All right, we're going to move in and talk about part number based documentation, because we are all in the business of getting paid for delivering parts. So you got to be able to process those well and consistently with good quality and on time. So Craig, I'd love to have you share a bit here. So obviously this is just a basic job router. And so it outlines what's going to happen with a part, and then we'll dig into more details of within this part number. But can you kick us off here?
Yeah, so this particular part, we have this what stock we need in the part stock, and then below we have an order of operations and the general time it's supposed to take for your setup, breakdown, and machining of the part.
Yeah.
Who the planner is.
Yep.
And project manager. So that's just a general routing for engineering master.
Yep. And we'll show some screenshots, but basically with these operation numbers, you can click in and drill into those operations to get much more nuanced information about that. So, and then of course it's not on the screen, it's cut off from the top, but the approved drawing. So this is the part we're talking about. So just for scale, what I can't read the diameter of this part. How big is this thing, Craig?
This one's relatively small, about 48 inches in diameter by 1 inch thick.
Yep.
And this particular customer is every part is 100% inspected.
Got it.
So with the balloon drawing, we import it in and import all the dimensions.
Yeah, like we see here.
In, and then how they're to be checked.
Right. So calipers, inside mic, depth mic, tool check.
Correct.
And then tolerances, and you have all of them checked in this IPC column or in process check. So as you said, 100% inspection on every part, basically.
Yep, every part, even if we've done it 20 times, it's every part they want 100% inspected.
Okay. And then let's jump into the next. So here's an example of some work instructions. So can you share, obviously, so people can see there's a program number, there's some descriptions of what to bore, what to do, a roughing print that you've attached, and then some photos. Prior to organizing it this way, how are you communicating all this information to your machinists on the floor?
Originally it was, hey Craig, you've done this part before, so can you do it again?
Okay.
And
what if Craig wasn't there on vacation or had left?
Right. So that became an issue. So we started taking photos of the part, and then there were still questions. So then we started writing down the actual program number here. We've got a program number for the first and second side, a roughing print on what it's made to before it goes out for stress relieving, and then it comes back for finishing. So that way we get a consistent part and consistent product to the customer.
That is what it's all about, isn't it? So here's another example with even more depth, quite a bit of photography here. So imagine, and in the prep work for this, we talked about you have Obviously, you're more experienced people. You have machinists that are newer. They generally work on smaller, less expensive parts. But is this the level of documentation that you provide to support those more junior folks to kind of get more experience and move up the chain into more senior level machinist?
Yes. So this particular part is fairly complex because there's cavity depths we have to check before we start machining on it to know where our 0 points are. And some of the tolerances on this are a 0.5 of an inch.
Wow, that's tight.
For an 8-inch bore on this part, yeah, it's a challenge. But all of our parts have documentation as to what is required, where to check, especially if it's a casting like this particular one is.
Mm-hmm. Now, occasionally we hear when we're talking to a company, we hear the feedback or the comments that it takes too much time to document things, and what's the point of doing so? What would you say about the time investment to actually write in some text, take some pictures, compared to not doing that? Is there a good ROI?
Oh, yes, for sure. On this particular job, we used to spend, I know one time we spent over an hour just having a conversation on how we did it the last time.
Okay.
Where here it took us it took us over an hour to do it this way, but you only have to do it once.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's a step-by-step process on how it's actually done.
Sure.
And just on this part, because we do it about once a year,
Mm-hmm.
so we kind of get a little forgetful as we get older.
Sure.
Where now we can pick right up and go through it, and we know where to start, we know what to look for, and it becomes easier.
Awesome. And I do see a few comments in the chat. Claire says we use this feature extensively. And then Frank says we have so many examples of poor documentation causing scrap parts. Yeah, so without sharing any secrets, I imagine this casting or this part is a pretty expensive part. So if someone made a mistake because they didn't have the documentation and scrapped a part, I imagine that's a fairly expensive proposition compared to spending an hour to document it one time.
Yes. I mean, we're out our labor and we have to pay for the casting.
Right.
And not to mention the 8 to 10 weeks it takes to get the casting.
Sure. Yeah. Eric says lack of process documentation was a serious problem at my previous job. I still get phone calls from them asking about process I developed before I left. That is an incredible comment, Eric. Thank you for sharing that. So you no longer work there and you're still getting phone calls from your old employer asking how something was done. If that's not a perfect example of what we're talking about today, I don't know what is. So thank you for sharing that, Eric. That's awesome. So this shot just shows the work holding page. So this is specifically how you document, work holding. So you can have fixture numbers, you can have vices, you can have all sorts of custom tooling and document that, and even where you store and find that in your storage. Because I know in many shops, the fixture area is, can be very large with lots of racks and lots of shelves, and you can. I've certainly heard of shops that have some nice tooling. They spent hours and thousands of dollars building, and then they can't find it again later. They have to remake the fixtures and remake the tooling, and probably they finish it right around the time they find the old stuff. So yeah, just another example of the types of things that are really important to capture, even just where something is stored, right? And the bigger a company gets, the bigger the facility, the more likely it is things can go missing. So this one example, Craig, this is not machining. This is a different process. Looks like you are doing some pressure testing here. Is that right?
Yes, further down the operation on the same part number, we actually do a multi-step pressure test, one before stress relieving, and then once before impregnation, and then after impregnation. So we actually do it 3 different times.
Wow.
To make sure we don't have any leaks.
Sure. Yeah. And then you have a couple of checkpoints for this. So this would be required that someone would sign the actual pressure recorded, not just a dimensional. We're not talking about a dimension here. We're talking about a pressure test result. So they're putting this in, and if it's within the tolerance range of the right pressure, it gives them a green go. And if it's not, it gives them a red or a yellow.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. Awesome. And do you have to report this to your customers as well, the results of the pressure test?
We do not have to report that to the customer, but if it fails, we have to try and correct it or tell the customer that at this point, this casting failed pressure testing and we can't repair it.
Got it. Okay. And then you provided this. So this is just an example, a rough drawing of what this thing looks like. That's so yeah, that's a complicated part. There's a lot going on. You said with some tight tolerances. So trying to figure that out without a lot of good documentation is a tough job.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And Bob, I'd love to have you share. You're using similar parts of the system to document things. So here's one we call a run description on a part number of yours. You want to share what's going on here?
Yeah, this is we have a robot hooked to a couple of our 5-axis machines, which is an Aurora robot, and we have a pallet system. So a lot of our parts run off the pallet system. So this is just basically showing what pallet style we're using, where it's at, how to put, get the right pallet, get it in, get the raw material on it. Just kind of basically loading up the robot, getting ready to go. I got a video that's attached to it also on how to torque down the parts onto the pallet, and it just gets it takes all the head knowledge that like I say, one person has, and then if they move to another job or another person is sick that day, it's very easy to pull up and say, here, this is how we get this thing started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and coming back to the point we were talking about earlier with packaging, here it is right here. Use customer provided packaging. So if someone doesn't need to decide to grab some paper, cardboard boxes or whatever, like presumably the customer provides this, and that's how it goes. So if the shipping person is on vacation, someone else knows exactly how that works, right?
Right.
Awesome. All right, and then so let's get in a little deeper yet. Can you want to talk us through what we're seeing here on this tool page?
So this is the tools needed to build this particular job, with the op it's used in, the machine it goes on.
Sorry.
And then what the tool number is, and then every tool number is built into an assembly, which is an RTA, rotating tool assembly. And we have a rotating tool assembly rack in our shop where these rotating tools will set, so the guys can or gals can go over and cart them up and then load the job up. And this is kind of how it goes through, what the cutter is, where the sequence description is, where it gets to where that process is happening, what kind of holder it's being used on, stick out length. In case it, for some reason, it got tore down. It does happen once in a while where you need a holder, and hey, we got to tear this RTA down and get the holder and put another tool in there. So this is the tooling side of this system has been a great help for me, because my pet peeve is knowing where, or the cutters, you spend a lot of money with tooling. drills and
Sure.
taps and stuff. And where is it at? Where's it located at? Well, it's when you build a tool in here, it assigns it a number. We've saved money because we know how many tools, how many drills we have. And it's not in Joe's box. It's in Joe's box. Stuff like that. That's taking that out of it. Now we're going through Joe's box and saying, hey, we got to build these tools and get them into our library now because you can't keep them here. So that's kind of a nice thing, but it's really taken a lot of just head knowledge, where these tools are kept. And, we have a whole wall right now that we have dedicated for all of our tooling. And just makes life easy when you set up a job.
And prior to organizing this way, were you working off of just something printed off your CAM system, and then how was the actual organization done, the way it was stored besides Joe's box?
It was messy. We had bins that we used, and we just labeled them per the what the tool was, the description. So then we, now that we've, built the tool and we know where the tool's at, the guys can look on the screen to see what we have too. We have a whole inventory that's kept right in ProShop. You look up the drills. Okay. Do we have that, 437 carbide, through coolant flush drill? Look at it. Oh, maybe we got two different lengths, and then it also tells us what jobs it's being currently used on in case we're working on another job, and we can go say, hey, is that, do we need to get some more because you're using it over here? And it just takes a lot of time out of it, makes it a lot quicker. Each one of our guys have a computer at their stations. They can look up the tools, instantaneously. And there's no question, do we have it or don't we have it?
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, given all that sort of new organization, does that actually translate into lower setup times or better first pass yield when they are tooling up the exact tool in the right holder, the right extension length, to prove out that program or rerun the same program again?
Oh yeah, it's taken a lot of time out of our jobs. We've probably seen a good 10 to 15% time setup reduction just by wheeling the cart over to the RTAs that are sitting there and loading them on the thing, because now you know where they're at and locate it. And then if you do need, even in the planning stage when we're planning out how we're going to do the job, okay, hey, do we have that, one size drill, or do we got to get it? Because it seems like the tooling side is an ever building section because there's just so many different sizes of everything you can possibly have and brands and all that stuff. So it's really taking it and put it in a nice little kit where you can do. And, if you have a laptop and you're carrying it around the shop, you can just pull it up right there and find it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right, we're going to move into the last few points and then get into some Q&A. How does process know-how help with career progression? So Heidi, this is where we're going to come back to you and a few things that you shared with us. So I loved what you shared about what you're doing with your apprentice program. Can you talk about that?
So we have we're a smaller shop, but we have a pretty good apprentice program here. Some of them, I think most of them probably have started as shop hands. So we have that in the org chart and they do the training there. And then once we put them into the apprenticeship program, they'll follow up to the journeyman level and then work with different journeymen here. But it's fully built out in the org chart, gives the milestones and everything. And then I think you have the screen on the Rapids program, because ours is through the U.S. Department of Labor. So it's an official apprenticeship program that we're a registered employer for. And then it just makes it real easy to know what steps an apprentice has to take to get to be a journeyman.
Okay. Yeah, I had not learned about this before, so thank you for teaching me about this program. And certainly if your shop is dealing with this and wanting to get an apprentice program in place, definitely look this up, the Department of Labor Rapids program, and sounds like it's pretty comprehensive. and very useful. That's awesome.
Yes, and other things that I've done, like just through our local organizations where there might be opportunities to have grants for apprentices. It's always helpful to be able to prove their education and training, not just their schooling, but on the job training. So a lot of times I've had to submit things, just proving they're on the job training. So it's really easy to do that.
Fantastic. All right. And let's talk a little bit about transferring ownership. I know Bob and Heidi, you guys are on a process right now to transition out, have your kids take over the business. Can you share a little bit about that process? We have one picture to go along with this, but I know there's a lot more to it than just that. Can you share a little bit about that process with us?
Bob, did you want to, or you want me to? A couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, we have 4 children, and one of our sons and his wife approached us about wanting to come into the family business, and we were kind of like shocked and excited, and they had come from big manufacturing careers in large companies, so it was just personally it was great. We did set out with the whole family to have a lot of family discussions on what that would look like if anybody else was interested. Once we started narrowing that down, even got a grant to help us figure out that process and the legalities with it. But now we're year 2 into the plan that we have all documented out, and which even is more important to capture the process knowledge, especially with Bob being out, journeyman mold maker on the shop floor, capturing that knowledge to set our business up, and what we never thought when we began that, it can continue beyond us. So just trying to capture that and get these systems in place so that it can scale and continue. So that's the plan. We're, not sure when we're going to exit. It's going to be several years yet, but I can see like we're basically working ourselves out of it by documenting everything and building out the org chart, putting different people in the positions. But it really helps us to look at our company as a whole.
Yeah. I have to give some credit to actually with our son and daughter-in-law coming into the business, we kind of give some credit to them because they kind of pushed us in this direction to get an ERP system, MES system in place, because they came from a big shop where they did this kind of stuff, and it kind of, having that tool, and they vetted a lot of other systems. That's why we ended up picking ProShop. It was the easiest fit for our machine shop as it is. And then, just, I don't know what we would do if we didn't have that today, as busy as we are, if we didn't have this ProShop system going, because it'd be clipboards lined up around the office just hanging. So it's it's saved on the paperwork.
Sure.
No, Bob's exactly right. We knew we wanted to get a system, but I will give them credit because they did look at about 10 different, and they vetted it. They did a thorough job. And ProShop was just the best one for machine shops, and
Sure.
they were right. Oh,
well, thank you. And I love the fact that you're being very intentional about this transition process. Sounds like you've gone on some long vacations and have felt good about not having to, not needing to be totally tied in and, on call. You definitely don't, when you finally do make that transition, you don't want to be like Eric, where you're getting phone calls a year later while you're on a Hawaiian cruise, and they're like, hey, where's the fixture for this part number? And how did you dial in that bore? So yeah, important, good stuff.
no, I was telling you a couple weeks ago, we went away for like 10 days, and you could pull ProShop up on your phone. You're like, oh, this is cool. The shop is just humming along and working, and it's easy to, even if you want to work, you can work remotely, but just to have it at your fingertips to know what's going on makes it really nice.
Sure. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do this conclusion slide. So, I think hopefully we've drilled home the whole point. Get it out of your head, get it out of your people's heads. It's got to be in a system. If it doesn't exist there, in some regards, it doesn't really exist because it's at risk of not being passed on to other folks. So we're going to get into Q&A here. There's a bunch of questions here already. I'll go ahead and start at the top. So Hank asked the question, I understand the software is marketed to machine shops given today's context and conversation, but how applicable is it to other industries or disciplines? If not, are there similar tools you'd recommend that could be integrated into ERPs? So we obviously, machine shops is our specialty, largely because that was the kind of company that we owned where we built the system. But, we provided some examples today of things that were not machining related. Craig shared, their process for pressure testing some parts. Obviously they machined those parts first, but then they were doing other processes unrelated. I will just share, even though machine shops make up by far the lion's share of our client base, we have clients that do fabrication work. We have clients that do cable harness assemblies. We have clients that do injection molding. We even have a client, they're in Madagascar, the island off of Africa, that they make humanitarian drones that deliver food and medicine to remote areas. And they do composite layups, they do electrical wiring, they build and assemble they don't have a CNC machine, in the building, but they manage the process of building their drones using ProShop. And I even heard recently that they're starting to use work orders to track their flight tests. So they have a defined process for a test flight, and they have a part master where they have exactly all the steps that need to happen, the quality checks, the flight pre-checklist, and then they issue a work order to manage, and the pilots actually track time to log their hours on different aircraft. So I thought that was a pretty creative use. So clearly it can be done. And if you're interested in talking to our team about that, we are, with that said, we are pretty hyper-focused on only selling ProShop to companies that will truly benefit. If they have needs that we don't meet, we are not going to sell you the system. It's not worth our time or your time to start down something that's not going to end with success. So, but thank you for that question, Hank. Erica asked, do you report 100% through ProShop reports? Maybe that's for Craig or Heidi or Bob. Do you have any reports that you have to send to your customers that are not out of ProShop?
All the inspection stuff we do send through ProShop. So
Okay.
We'll print out the first article on IPC and send it. I'll send it to the customer because that has the purchase order, part number, rev level, and all the inspection points.
Got it. And Bob and Heidi, how about you? Oh, you're muted, Bob.
Currently, we do not report it through the ProShop stuff yet, but we are moving in that direction. We're less than a year into the ProShop right now, so we're still doing a lot of data dump into ProShop. We can't get it in fast enough because we find that it's much easier once it's in there to operate the business. Right.
Very good. Yeah, and I will say, so we have, standardized reports out of ProShop, AS 9102 reports, some standards. We don't have every single thing under the sun, obviously. Pretty much every report in ProShop can easily be exported to CSV or Excel files or PDF files. But additionally, two things. We have a team now that builds custom reports for people. If they need a very specific format for a client, we can just build that for them. And then we also are just releasing our Power BI integration. So that's a live sort of API integration. So if you had a specific job and you needed to report it in a certain way, you could extract the data through the API into Power BI, which is an incredible tool at manipulating data and presenting it in different ways. So that could also be a way that a company could create a custom report or a graph or whatever, something that their customer needed, just using tools on their own. So, so thank you for that question. Edgar asks, A specific 20 times deburring process for a small titanium part used on a variety of part numbers. This process would change as new tools or processes are utilized and optimized. How do you bring a new standard process to all the part numbers? It's a great question, Edgar. So if any of you have a thought about that, I'd love to hear it. If not, I'll answer the question.
You can go ahead, Paul.
All right. So when you have something that is common to many part numbers, many part numbers, there's a couple ways that you can do that. Probably the most common way would be to use either the tasks module or possibly the documents module. You can reference, a specific task of how something's done. If you want to have people specifically trained in that and certified to be able to do it, then the task module will definitely be the place to do that. And then you can link that task into any part number that has that process. So maybe that specific deburring process. And so when you get a new part number that has the same deburring process, rather than describing it out in detail at the part level, you can just link it to the task and say, it's task number 11050. And when people click and link to that, it will always be the latest current revision of that. So you don't need to worry about going and updating 100 different places, 100 different part numbers for if the deburring process changes a little bit. There's just one place where it resides, and it links to all the part numbers. So that would be my suggestion, Edgar. You could also just have a document that has that outlined, in the document module, and then link that as well. But that wouldn't have the training aspect of it as well. Thank you for that question. And then Frank asked, specific to CMMC, who is taking care of that initiative at ProShop now? It's a good question. So we have a number of folks working on that. So we have someone leading our own CMMC certification. So we plan to be certified, or at least ready for an audit. Who knows if we can get an auditor by sort of Q1, Q2 next year. So that's relatively soon. And then we certainly have a whole bunch of developers and project managers and people working internally to build the ProShop features to allow our customers to make it easier to be compliant. And ProShop Safe is one of our most recent initiatives for that. So basically it adds a really robust layer for CUI management of where they're stored, who can see them, even tagging of what type of CUI they are or what type of sensitive data they are. So there's a lot of activities there, and that's just definitely a full team effort. So thanks for that, Frank. And Claire says, I wish we had this apprenticeship program in Alberta, Canada. Our apprenticeship program has really fallen apart since COVID. That's hard. So what would you, any advice or tips on creating an internal apprenticeship program for a small shop with only one journeyman and a few shop hands? Heidi or Bob, you want to take that?
I think I would just model it the same way the USDL one is having some related classroom training, using your community college or whatever you want to use, certain classes, and then on the job training. And it typically takes about 4 years, and the classroom is done first. And then they have a sponsor mentor, or, they can work with several mentors. But if you just model it the same way, what the USDOL apprenticeship does is allows them to go anywhere in the United States to be recognized. But they'll still probably gain the same skills if you do it that way, kind of pairing the classroom with on the job by someone that's obviously already a journeyman.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. I think I need to step in now. I think that's all the time we have for today's webinar. We hope you all found it valuable. Thanks to all of these great questions. Thanks to everyone for attending. Thanks to all of our presenters. This was a very insightful webinar for me, at least.
And I'm just going to share the contact info here for these folks. So feel free to reach out to any of them or us.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can reach out to them directly through through this contact info. And remember that everyone is going to receive a follow-up email with a link to a recording of this webinar, so you can revisit the content at your leisure and look up this contact info to get a hold of these fine people. So thank you all for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day. Happy Halloween.
Thanks, Eli. Happy Halloween, everybody. And thank you, Bob, Heidi, and Craig, so much.
Thank you.